Today I am joined by Aidan Munford, who plays as a goalkeeper for NPL Queensland side Lions FC. Thank you so much for joining me today, Aidan.
No, it's fantastic to be here.
We'll start with my basic, generic, stock standard first question to break the ice. Where did your passion and love for football first begin?
It's a funny story. So, like, as a sort of a kid growing up with an Aussie mum and a New Zealand dad, football's not naturally the first sport you gravitate to. So I played cricket. But funnily enough, my twin brother really hated cricket and he struggled with communication growing up. So we needed to play team sports. So it was like, okay, well, he's not going to play cricket, so we've got to find something else to do. So friend of mum and dad's was the president of the local soccer club. So we decided that we'd give that a go. And look, I didn't really have any family history with football. My grandfather, my great grandfather played rugby league for Australia, so a bit of sporting pedigree, but nothing to do with football. But once I got involved with the game, I fell in love with it. And I think like many people, you join a massive global community of of people who love the game, and yeah, it's infectious. So no, I've been playing since I was about 7. So I'm 22 now. So, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon.
Now, Elise Perry is a very famous example of someone who played. She played for Australia in cricket and Australia in football. How did you
Yeah.
rate your cricket skills? Do you think if you had stuck with it, you could have
Nah,
possibly?
no chance. So I think you've interviewed my best mate, Michael Glassick, who was actually a really good cricketer, like, played for New South Wales and things like that. And we've been to the nets and he's completely embarrassed me. So I wasn't much of a cricketer. I love the game and I would still love to go down the nets and have a hit and play if I had any time. But no, there's no chance I was pulling an Elise Perry for sure. No chance. She's a wonderful athlete, just quietly. Yeah, fantastic athlete.
Now, aside from one example, which was Michael Theo, every single defender or goalkeeper I've ever interviewed, and there's been a lot now, has told me that they always started out, as a striker, a right winger or something, and then they found their way back to goalkeeper. So was it a similar story with you, or were you always a goalkeeper?
Well, I guess like playing sort of under sevens and under eights, yeah, there's not really too many positions. So like I got into goalkeeping at 8. So by under 8, I was playing half game in goals, half game on the field. I did sort of play midfield in my outfield days, but they were short. I only played outfield probably sevens and eights, and by 9 I was a full-time keeper. So no, I don't have the story like many others of being strikers and then slowly moving back. I got into goalkeeping pretty early.
And that first game you ever played as a goalkeeper, obviously, I think goalkeepers are crazy in a good way, having people kick balls at you, having to basically, be held accountable for every single small error you make. So with that first game you played, even though it was under eights, how did you think you went during the match? Were you a natural goalkeeper or did
I
it kind of
don't.
take you a while?
It's funny, like I don't actually remember my first ever time putting the gloves on. I just know that I did well in a game, and they were like, "You could do this." And then what I do remember really vividly was the moment I made the choice. So, funnily enough, when I was coming through, and it's crazy now that I spent some time coaching some younger kids. At 9, we went to full field, and I look at under nines now. I'm going, "How the hell did we play on a full field?" But at 9, there was a conversation before our first session of the year. We want a full-time goalkeeper. It was sort of between me and another kid who was sort of thinking about it. And I just went, I'll do it full time. So that, and then I remember that season doing quite well. I remember making mistakes like all young kids, but I on the whole, I remember sort of doing well, and that after that year, recognizing that this was really sort of my passion and what I wanted to do.
Well, you have a bit of a different story to me because when I first played goalkeepers, I think it was under 10. I was so keen to do it. I put on the gloves. I was confident. I was ready. Made one really good save to start the match with. My head was held high. And then I think I copped about 12 and I never put the gloves on ever again. So you're one step
Can be a
above the rest.
scarring experience playing in goal. Yeah, you got to be a certain type of character to stick with it, I think.
Speaking of characters, I think I already know the answer to this question. But did you have any football heroes or idols growing up, supporting the game, watching on TV? If so,
Well,
were they?
yeah, I guess my moment of inspiration as a goalkeeper, funnily enough, I think probably came a little bit earlier than I actually started playing football, was in 2005 watching Australia qualify for the World Cup. Mark Schwarzer saving those 2 penalties, I was an inspiration. I think that probably, once I started playing football, that's probably why I wanted to become a goalkeeper. I'd seen that. Yeah, look, a couple of other inspirations, I think, being a New Zealander, Glenn Moss, Mark Paston, both of them fantastic goalkeepers. Some people I've looked up to, and probably the first goalkeeper at a European level I remember watching him being inspired by was probably David De Gea. I think I probably gravitated to him because of the stick he got. And I think, we all saw eventually how good he became. And I think the same with Joe Hart. Like, I think both of them, used to cop a lot of stick and still do to an extent, but both of them are class goalkeepers. And I think both of them, won Premier League titles, Golden Gloves, and espouse their quality. So yeah, those couple for me were massive inspirations. Yeah, the other one I probably remember watching a lot of growing up, and being fortunate enough to sort of have close contact with as well, was Liam Reddy. Rocket, I got coached by Rocket for a bit, was a junior goalkeeper at Sydney United as a kid when he was there playing first grade, and he's got from the A-League. And he was just someone that I think I looked up to because he spent some time out of the pro game and then got back in, and, he had his challenges, but he's such a fantastic guy, and someone, again, because I had that a fortunate opportunity to sort of get to know him a little bit. Yes, was someone I also looked up to as well.
In terms of your own professional career, it really started with the Central Coast Mariners. Obviously, they've got a massive reputation for producing brilliant youth players, which I'll touch on a bit later. But when you first joined that setup, stepping up from, semi-pro amateur football to a full professional setting, training with full professionals, did you find the step up difficult at all, or was it quite an easy transition?
Yeah, so it was interesting because I'd sort of, I'd obviously been at N-Swiss and things as a kid, had a year at Sydney FC before going to the Mariners. But yeah, it was a massive step up. And I chucked in the deep end as well. Like, I signed in the MYL, but I was training first team basically from the moment I got there. And just, yeah, massive step up. I barely made a save in the first couple of weeks of training. And Matt Nash, who was my goalkeeper coach for nearly the whole time I was at the club, said in those first few weeks, this is a learning period for you. You're not going to save much in these first couple of weeks. Just get your feet on the ground, understand, pick up cues, learn how to deal with being in a pro environment. And then, yeah, it was a big step up, but there were, the players and the coaching staff at the time when I was there, looked after me, and made sure that I took my lessons. And Nick Montgomery was still playing when I arrived at the club, and he ended up going on to become my youth team coach. But Monty, especially when I first started with the first team, really took me under his wing and looked after me, and yeah, eventually became my coach, which was a nice circle. And now he's got the first team job, so I'm super happy for him. But yeah, it was a big step up, like anything. And I see it now with the young boys that come in to the Roar, or even to our first team at Lions. It is a big step up from youth football to senior, especially as a goalkeeper. Things happen so much quicker, and you have a lot of responsibility. But if you can learn and take the lessons every time you make a mistake, or every time you concede a goal, or every session you do, you'll do all right.
Now, I jumped the gun a bit earlier mentioning, Central Coast Mariners and their excellent record with youth. And pretty much their whole time in the A-League, they've had that record of producing youth players, of having youth players come through and do really well. Matt Ryan, Trent Sainsbury, Tom Rogic are just some examples. But even in recent times, yourself, Michael Glassock, Dan Hall, who's now, being amazing in the A-League. So from your experience and in your opinion, what do you think it is about the club that really helps get the best out of these young players?
It's interesting, right? Because I think obviously there's a big gap between those two groups you talk about. So there's that first sort of group of Brian Sainsbury, and then there's the current crop, which I think you've got to look at. The likes of Dan Hall is a massive example. Michael, brilliant example. Alo, Hatchie, all these guys. I think what makes the club really successful in that space is a couple of things. Firstly, I think it's the fact that as a young player at that club, you'll get your chance, you'll get your opportunity to get in the first team. The club doesn't have massive resources, so they draw on the youth team a lot. I think secondly, it was the variety of coaches we had, that especially that group. So that group of us that came through, we were exposed to a couple of different coaches who did a lot for us. So like even in the early days when I arrived, when I was sort of with Lockie Wales, Steve White, these guys, Ben Kahn was our coach at the time, and his assistant Will Vasquez, and I think both of them had a role to play in our development. And Will stayed on after Ben left, and I think all the boys who've come through would talk about Will. And then we had probably next in terms of a long-term appointment, we had Ray Jr., Steve O'Connor, who were ex-AIS and had a big impact on myself and Mickey. And then lastly, especially with this group, is Monty. Monty had a big impact on us as a group. He's he knows what it means to play for the club. He knows what it means to play at the highest level. So when he came in as the youth team coach, and now he's obviously got the first team job, he instilled into us what it meant to play for the Mariners. So I think, I think it's got to be the coaches, I think is one. There's been a lot of good coaches of that youth team in the last 5 years, and that's represented in the players that have come through. I think it's the resources, the lack of, that gives you young players an opportunity. I think it's also the fact that the youth team is at Central Coast is probably a lot closer than a lot of the other youth teams. A lot of us were living away from home, away from our families, and it's a small place. So we're kind of all 10, 15 minutes apart. Like, whereas in Sydney, you got boys living at one side of the city to the other. It's an hour. We were all 10, 15 minutes away from each other. So we spent so much time together and we built a really close bond. And that kind of helped us push each other on the park. So like, to this day, I watched the FA Cup final the other night, and I'm obviously no longer at the Mariners. I left a couple of years ago, but I was so proud to see all the guys I came through the youth team with, and Monty as the coach and Sergio, in that final, because their success represents us as a group. And I was as proud watching that probably as if I'd been there. They're my best, some of my best mates, and it's a really, really good youth team dressing room culture. We had a really good culture in that group.
And when you left the Mariners, you joined a club that was formerly in the A-League, but obviously they're a bit different to what they were back then. There's no Clive Palmer. It's been dissolved and reformed, Gold Coast United. So what were your expectations firstly coming into that club?
It was an interesting move for me, because I was getting up to the upper end of my age bracket at Central Coast. I was sort of 21, about to turn 21, and I'd done 2 years as the number one youth team goalkeeper. So 2 years in NPL 2, I'd won players player. So I felt like I'd ticked the box, and I had and this is where a lot of credit has to go to Alan Stajic, who was first team coach at the time. I sat down with Stag and said, look, I'm getting to the upper end of my age bracket. Am I going to get a first team contract? And he was honest enough and said, look, we're probably not going to give a third choice, and your third choice in our mind, we're probably not going to change the order. We're probably not going to give you a contract. So it's probably better you go and play NPL 1 somewhere. So I was like, the honesty from him was fantastic, because I could have stayed and probably it would have helped the youth team compete in the NPL, to have myself on that team. They obviously ended up winning it that year anyway without me. So probably they were fine, but it would have been easy for the club to be selfish and say, no, we want to keep you around for another year. But Alan was really good, and he gave me the opportunity to go on good terms. And Ken Chembry was the same, gave me that opportunity to move on, and Monty understood as well. So come to Gold Coast United, it was Glenn Moss, who someone I consider a really good, close advisor to myself, and someone I'm lucky to have in my corner. Sort of helped set up the move. He spoke to Christian Rees, who was the head coach, and sort of said, I'm looking for an opportunity to play regular first team football at a level up from what I was playing for the Central Coast youth team. And I came into the club, and look, no, it's not the club that Clive Palmer owned. It's not the glitz and glamour of first class jets and stuff. It's a club run by some really hardworking, caring people who care about football on the Gold Coast. And again, their neighbours in Gold Coast Knights have a lot more money and a lot more, flashy players and things. But what Gold Coast United, I think, has is good people. And I really enjoyed my year there. And it was where I came across Paul Jones, the goalkeeping coach, who's now at the Brisbane Roar, and was part of bringing me to the Brisbane Roar for my short time there. And he's probably one of the best I've ever worked with. So I was really good people running that club. And again, they're getting better every year. They're getting new facilities. So I hope for their sake that, things continue to develop, because there's good people at that football club.
Now, the NPL's a competition that I personally rate really highly. There's a lot of good players there. There's a mixture of, young, hungry players, and also players who have played in the A-League or overseas who are just winding down their career. So for you to come there and pretty much instantly make a massive impact, even culminating with you winning NPL Goalkeeper of the Year. What was that like for yourself?
It was a fantastic season. Like on a team level, we struggled. We just avoided relegation, and we were probably predicted to sort of challenge top four. So it didn't work out from a team perspective. From an individual perspective, it was a massive confidence boost, and it's given me a platform to build my career on. It's all well and good to do well in youth team football. And I had a good reputation leaving Central Coast. I'd done well, and I'd sort of been on the fringe of the first team, but it's a different environment when you leave. So yeah, it was great. I had a great year, and again, a lot's got to go down to Paul Jones, the goalkeeping coach. He massive belief in me, improved a number of aspects of my game. So yeah, it was really nice to win that award and to sort of give myself a platform to build from. Yeah, and you're right. The NPL is a tough competition, especially as a goalkeeper. Especially as a goalkeeper going out and playing the NPL, I think is really beneficial. I think you're seeing A-League clubs start doing that. Like I know yesterday the Jets announced that Noah James is going to go out on loan to Dandenong Thunder, and I think that's brilliant for Noah. He's a young goalkeeper who needs matches, and I think him going out there is going to be great for his development. So I think there's a pipeline of good goalkeepers in the NPL. So I consider myself very proud to beat some of the competitors to that award in 2020.
Now, one thing I always find interesting talking to professional footballers and just football players in general is the little nuances they have in a game day preparation. Some people have very strict routines. Some people have really weird superstitions they do. Do you have anything like that? What's an average game day preparation for you like?
I used to be quite rigid. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. I used to be very had to be X, Y, Z sort of thing, in order. I've kind of changed my perspective on that now. I try and be a little bit more flexible because life's not rigid. It's very, things going to happen. So I think it's better to be flexible with your game day preparation. So, but look, there's a couple of things. Like, I'll always have my stuff packed the night before. I've got certain music I'll listen to. I'll try and get some yoga in the morning of the game, always just to stretch, loosen up, relax the mind. Yeah, and just generally put my kit on a certain order. Generally go shorts, socks, shirt goes on last. That's probably the extent of my superstitions.
Are you confident enough in your music taste to give us a little taste for some of these songs you like to listen to?
Absolutely not. Like I can't be publicly revealing the garbage that I probably listen to. So I'll keep that one to myself.
Now, speaking of clubs like Gold Coast United, which used to be obviously very different clubs, another club you joined, funnily enough, used to be one of the most successful in Australian football history back in the NSL days. Wollongong Wolves, obviously a massive club, massively passionate supporters in the Wolf Den. What was your experience like there? Did you feel any pressure knowing that this is such a massive club and pretty much all the people of Wollongong live and die on this club and they want it desperately in the A-League? So did you feel any pressure representing a club that big, or was it all pretty easy for you?
It was a fantastic experience down at Wollongong. Look, it probably didn't go as I'd hoped. Obviously, COVID interrupted season, coming in and out of the team a little bit. I joined the Wolves on the back of the opportunity to also train with the Wellington Phoenix, who are basing themselves out of Wollongong, and as being half Kiwi and having been selected at New Zealand for youth age, they were interested in getting me in to train with them. So it was a good arrangement. I was going to train a lot with the Phoenix and play for the Wolves. But yeah, so it didn't go really as I'd hoped. Again, like COVID interrupted season, coming in and out of the team. The other goalkeeper at Wollongong done really well, Hayden Juros. I think he played against the Mariners in the FFA Cup a couple of months back, and you could see his quality. So it wasn't a case of sort of me going in as the out and out number one. It was sort of fighting for our spot, and he'd been biding his time for a while. So I got the start, and then he come in and he'd done really well. So, and then obviously the season got cut short. So, and then it was a decision about, well, what's best for me. And I decided it was best for me to move on. But a fantastic club, and again, really good people there, and a great supporter base, like you point out. And I think, Luke is a good coach, and I think he's fundamentally also a really good person. He was one of the first people to message me when I got my contract at the Roar. So that shows you what type of person he is. I think I was disappointed when I didn't play at Wollongong, but he was a really good communicator. He communicated to me why I wasn't playing. And again, we left on really good terms, and he's someone I'm lucky enough to still have a really good relationship with. So it's a great club, great people, and I think they'll do well in the NPL this year. We've got a good team, and yeah, Luke will again have a team that represents him as a coach, which is hardworking, tough, and knows how to win. So yeah, it was a nice little stint down there, but and I wish them all the best.
I must say you've been brilliantly answering my questions. In fact, you answered a question I hadn't even asked yet, which was going to be about Luke Wilkshire. So I'll move on to something else that you mentioned just then. New Zealand. You've obviously represented your country at youth level, which is absolutely massive. I personally don't know what it's like to represent my country, unfortunately. So when you first were called up to the New Zealand youth teams, what was that moment like for you? Do you remember what you were doing even when you got the call?
Yeah, so like unfortunately, I've actually never got to play a game for New Zealand. I've only been in the camps, and the one time I was due to play, I got injured the night before. I was in 2019 versus Australia in the 2-match series. I was due to start the game at Campbelltown, which is 10 minutes from where I grew up. So it was a very, very disappointing moment to miss out on that game and make my debut. But yeah, I do remember. I remember getting the email. I think from a young age, I've always strongly identified with that part of my heritage. I've always watched the All Blacks and things like that, and I was always, keen on watching the All Whites, and great. And again, like I've been lucky enough to come across a couple of All Whites who I now consider people that are, people in my corner. I played with Shane Smeltz at Gold Coast United and have a really good relationship with Shane, and I've developed a really good relationship with Glenn Moss. So, lucky enough to know these guys, and they've told me about what it means to play for the All Whites and things. So yeah, it was an amazing experience going to the camps. I was in the camps leading up to the Under-20 World Cup in 2018, and then in the lead up to the camps to the Olympics for Tokyo. And it's such a fantastic culture. The New Zealand boys, they're just such good guys. Such a good culture was built under Des Buckingham, which is, I think, now being continued under the stewardship of Danny Hay. So many good young players. Like you look at people like Libby Kakache, these were guys I was in camp with, and they're just such good players. Libby, Elijah, Nando. Goalkeeping wise, you've got Mikey Wood, who's obviously playing in Japan now. It's these are all such good young players. So there's I think we showed in that 2-match series in 2019 that we'll match it with Australia going forward. Our young players, I think, are as good, if not better, in my opinion, if you look at the amount of minutes they're getting in Europe as the Aussies. So, I think it's such a fantastic environment, very tight-knit, very focused on culture in terms of, embracing our Maori heritage and things like that for the Maori boys who really lead that. So it's a very special experience. And I'm hopeful one day I'll get the opportunity to be called up to the All Whites. I'm out of the sort of the age group space now. So I've got a lot of competition in terms of, guys playing at the highest level. You've got Stefan Marinovic in Israel, Ollie playing regularly for Wellington. Ollie's number 2 at Wellington, Alex Paulson, who's been brilliant. Mikey in Japan, and I think Jamie Searle over at Swansea. And there's a bunch of others I haven't mentioned. So the competition is fierce for the goalkeeping spots, but it's an aspiration for sure to get that call up to the All Whites.
It's been mentioned or hinted at a few times during this interview already, but Brisbane Roar, obviously you spent some time with them last year and at the start of this year. You already mentioned kind of how you got involved with Brisbane Roar. But when you first got there, what was your experiences like, training with this full professional team, some good goalkeepers like Macklin, Freak, and how did you just enjoy it overall?
The links not only with Paul Jones, it was with Warren Moon. I actually trained with the Roar in 2020 after finishing the season with Gold Coast United, and then decided that the best opportunity for me was down in with Wellington and Wollongong. But I had that relationship with Warren, and I spoke to Warren when we went into lockdown in Sydney about coming back to Queensland, and he said we'd be happy to have you in. And then surprised, once I got up here, I was actually offered a contract for 3 months, which was absolutely brilliant. And first ever full pro. So I was absolutely stoked. Great experience, great change room, brilliant goalkeeping coach in Paul Jones, and great goalkeeping group with Macklin and Geordie. I think we've worked really well together, and I'm really lucky that I'm actually still training with them going forward. So I'm still a part of the environment. But yeah, it was really, really, really good experience. And obviously was lucky enough to get on the bench against Western United. And yeah, just very hungry to obviously get back to that level. And I'm very grateful to Warren and Jonesy for the opportunity to continue training with the squad till the end of the season.
Unfortunately for goalkeepers, it's quite a unique position, given,
Mm.
except for a rare case, if you're on the bench, you're probably going to stay on the bench for the whole season if you've got to cement it in number one. But just being involved in the squad on the bench yourself, walking into the dressing room, seeing your name on the back of a kit, how much did that spur you on to kind of motivate yourself to, you're almost at your dream of playing in the A League, playing full professional football. So how much did that glimpse spur you on?
100%. It was I remember the week leading up to obviously that coming up, because I Geordie unfortunately injured himself during the week, and it sort of it dawns on you, yep, I'm going to be in the squad. So yeah, no, massively, massive motivation. I think the thing that, while that motivates me a lot, seeing the jersey and stuff, and that was a special experience. What I think motivates me more is the ability that, going in and training every day and seeing it, that you can match it at that level, that there's not that big a difference between you and the guy that's maybe playing, or the guy that's in front of you, just sort of going, I can match it with these guys. And that gives you that belief that you can go on and do really well. So yeah, while looking, the match day experience was really special. I think for me, the motivating factor is that I go in every day and I'm consistent, and I try and match it with the guys in front of me. So, but the environment kind of makes that easy for you, because we've got such a good goalkeeping group between Macklin, Geordie, myself, and Jonesy. It's such a good group.
And your current club is one of the biggest in NPL Queensland, one of the best in my opinion too, Lions. How did that
Yeah.
move come about? Were you kind of hoping to stay in Queensland to stay connected with the Brisbane Roar, or did you have offers all over Australia?
Yeah, so like there was opportunities to go down to Melbourne and places like that, but I felt for my career the best thing to do was to stay attached to an environment where I know that the coaching staff at the Raw will keep an eye on me and keep tabs, and obviously I'll keep training there. So the idea was to stay in Queensland, and the opportunity to come to Lions was huge. Yeah, I had an opportunity to go back to Gold Coast United, and I was appreciative of them wanting to take me back, but the opportunity to go to a club like Lions, with the history that club has, what it represents, it was a no-brainer. Like the success that they've had and the success that they want to have in the future, it didn't take much convincing to join that club. And I, a few weeks in now to my stint, I'm gaining an appreciation just for how big the club is and what it means to the people that are involved and to the community around Richlands. And I just want to do my best for the club, and just our aims this season are massive, and I'm looking forward to playing a big part in that.
So we know what happened last time you were in NPL Queensland. Obviously, you did very well, goalkeeper of the year. And then you went to Wollongong, didn't quite work out. You trained with the Brisbane Roar, the Phoenix. So how have all those experiences since your last goalkeeper of the year, in your opinion, improved you as a player and as a person, Aidan?
I think I've matured a lot. So I think after the season at Gold Coast United, that had been 3 years of playing regularly, week in, week out, gaining awards, players player at Central Coast, goalkeeper of the year in Queensland, players player at Gold Coast United. The season at Wollongong with the lockdown and not playing as regular as I would have liked taught me a lot about myself. There was a lot of time to dive into the mental side of my game, understand where my weaknesses were, because it's very easy when things are going well to sort of just think you've got it all figured out. It's when those moments come along that challenge you that you really learn a lot. So that period, plus then the short stint at the Raw, has improved me not only as a goalkeeper but as a person. And I think I'm well equipped for the season ahead, and I need to be, because this is a club at Lions where winning is not optional. It's a must. We must win. That's what we do. So I'm feeling very well equipped for the season ahead. And I think if you look at the types of signings that we've made, we've got a very, very good squad. And I think like the likes of Olympic, Gold Coast Knights, Peninsula Power, they'll all give us. And there are a couple of clubs outside the top four that have really recruited well. But I think we've got some of the best recruitment in the league, and I think we'll once again go in as one of the favourites to sort of do things in the league.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your football story with me, Aidan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for watching. This video is sponsored by Arrow Sport. Go to the link in the description and the friendly team at Arrow Sport will help you create your own football dream jersey. Whether it's starting from scratch or using one of their many templates on their website, creating a jersey with Arrow Sports is easy and prices start from just $50. Go to www.arrowsport.com.au and make your football kit dreams become a reality.